All right, so let's set the stage. Early 20th century Russia, a land of opulent palaces, lavish balls, and oh yeah, absolute chaos brewing just beneath the surface. And right in the middle of it all, a scraggly Siberian mystic with piercing eyes, questionable hygiene, and a knack for making people believe he had a direct line to God. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Grigori Rasputin, part holy man, part hypnotist, and depending on who you ask, part con artist. Before Rasputin became the poster child for royal drama, he was just a peasant from the depths of Siberia, a place so remote it makes middle of nowhere seem crowded. Born in 1869, young Grigori wasn't exactly a model citizen. His early life was a mix of petty crimes, heavy drinking, and generally not being the kind of guy you'd trust with your wallet, or your royal family for that matter. But then, somewhere along the way, Rasputin decided to turn over a new leaf. He claimed to have a spiritual awakening, left his village, and began wandering as a self-proclaimed holy man. Now, if you're picturing a serene monk or a wise guru, think again. Rasputin's idea of holiness was, let's say, unconventional. He preached a philosophy that mixed mysticism, Orthodox Christianity, and a heavy dose of sin first, repent later. His followers? A mix of outcasts, desperate believers, and the kind of people who thought a guy with wild eyes and a beard that could house small birds was the real deal. By 1905, Rasputin's reputation as a healer and mystic had spread far enough to land him in the orbit of Russia's most powerful family, the Romanovs. Enter Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra, rulers of the Russian Empire and parents to a very sick little boy. Their son, Alexei, had hemophilia, a condition that meant even a minor injury could turn deadly. For Alexandra, this wasn't just a medical issue, it was a crisis of faith. She was convinced that God had cursed her family, and she was desperate for a miracle. And that's when Rasputin walked in. Imagine the scene. Alexandra, frantic and full of hope, meets this rough-around-the-edges mystic who promises he can heal her son. It sounds absurd, but here's the thing. Alexei's condition seemed to improve whenever Rasputin was around. Was it prayer, hypnosis, a placebo effect? No one could say for sure, but Alexandra didn't care. In her eyes, Rasputin was nothing short of a miracle worker. Of course, not everyone in the royal court was thrilled about this bearded newcomer whispering in the Tsarina's ear. The nobility saw him as a threat, a peasant who had no business meddling in royal affairs. And let's be honest, Rasputin didn't exactly help his case. He wasn't just mysterious, he was downright scandalous. Rumors swirled about his wild drinking, his questionable morals, and his tendency to overstay his welcome at parties. As Rasputin's influence over the Romanovs grew, so did the drama. And let me tell you, the royal court turned into a soap opera. The nobility couldn't stand him, and honestly, they had a point. Here was this scruffy Siberian mystic, swanning around the palace like he owned the place, giving advice on state matters, and charming his way into Alexandra's inner circle. To the aristocracy, it was like letting a raccoon into the opera house. But Alexandra? She was all in. She believed Rasputin was the only one who could save her son, Alexei, whose hemophilia remained a constant source of anxiety. Whenever Alexei had a bleeding episode, Rasputin would swoop in, pray over the boy, and, like clockwork, the symptoms would ease. Was it divine intervention, a placebo effect, or just really convenient timing? Historians are still debating, but Alexandra didn't need proof. To her, Rasputin was a miracle worker, and that was that. Rasputin, of course, capitalized on this newfound power. He wasn't just a spiritual advisor, he became a de facto royal confidant. Need advice on foreign policy? Ask Rasputin. Want to know who should get a cushy government job? Rasputin's got you. The guy went from obscure mystic to power broker practically overnight, and he didn't even have to shave his beard. Naturally, this didn't sit well with the rest of the court. The ministers, generals, and nobles who'd spent their entire lives clawing their way into the Tsar's good graces now had to watch Rasputin waltz in and call the shots. The rumors started flying. Rasputin was sleeping with Alexandra. Rasputin was hypnotizing the royal family. Rasputin was secretly running the government. Was any of it true? Probably not. But the man wasn't exactly subtle about enjoying his new celebrity status. Outside the palace, things weren't much better. The Russian Empire was on shaky ground, with rising poverty, political unrest, and the looming specter of World War I. The common people, already fed up with the monarchy, saw Rasputin as proof that the Tsar and Tsarina were out of touch. Who needed bread when the royal family had their own personal wizard? The newspapers had a field day, printing lurid stories about Rasputin's debauchery. Every scandal, real or imagined, made headlines, and every headline chipped away at the Romanovs' credibility. By 1914, Russia was at war, and Rasputin's influence reached its peak. While Nicholas II was off commanding troops, Alexandra leaned on Rasputin more than ever. His advice wasn't just spiritual, it was political. He told her whom to trust, whom to fire, and how to handle the growing unrest. Spoiler, he wasn't great at it. The government became a revolving door of ministers, with Rasputin essentially playing puppet master. But with great power comes great enemies, and Rasputin had plenty. The nobles were furious, the public was outraged, and even some members of the royal family wanted him gone. The whispers of rebellion turned into full-blown conspiracies, and it was only a matter of time before someone decided to take matters into their own hands. By late 1916, Grigori Rasputin was a walking target. His influence over Alexandra had become the talk of every drawing room and back alley in Russia, and his enemies were lining up to take him down. But Rasputin? He was unfazed. Whether it was his unshakable faith or just supreme confidence, he believed he was untouchable. Spoiler, he wasn't. The conspiracy to end Rasputin's reign came from an unlikely coalition of nobles and royal relatives who, let's be honest, probably didn't agree on much else. Leading the charge was Prince Felix Yusupov, a fabulously wealthy aristocrat who, by some accounts, had as much flair for drama as Rasputin himself. His plan? Lure Rasputin to the Yusupov palace under the guise of a late-night get-together and make sure he didn't leave alive. On the night of December 30th, 1916, Rasputin arrived at the palace, greeted by Yusupov with the kind of warm welcome usually reserved for honored guests, or, in this case, soon-to-be victims. The setup was meticulously planned. A cozy basement dining room, laced cakes, and wine spiked with enough cyanide to take down a bear. The conspirators waited upstairs, confident that Rasputin's end was just a poisoned sip away. But here's where things get bizarre. Rasputin ate the cakes, he drank the wine, and nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. Was the poison ineffective? Did his infamous hardiness save him? The conspirators, already on edge, began to panic. This was not going according to plan. Yusupov, desperate to finish the job, grabbed a revolver and shot Rasputin at close range. Finally, the mystics slumped to the ground. Yusupov, thinking the ordeal was over, went upstairs to celebrate. But when he returned to check on the body, Rasputin wasn't there. Suddenly, the man who was supposed to be dead lunged at Yusupov, eyes wild, clawing his way up the stairs. It was like something out of a horror movie. The conspirators, now in full-blown panic mode, fired more shots, eventually subduing Rasputin for good. But even then, they weren't taking chances. They wrapped his body in a sheet, drove out to a frozen river, and dumped him into the icy waters. And just to add a final touch of folklore to the story, when Rasputin's body was found days later, some claimed his arms were raised as if he'd tried to claw his way out. The death of Rasputin was supposed to be the end of his influence, the beginning of a new chapter for Russia. But if the conspirators thought getting rid of him would stabilize the monarchy, they were dead wrong. The damage had already been done. The rumors, the scandals, the political chaos, it all contributed to the growing unrest that would soon boil over into revolution. Within months, the Romanov dynasty fell, and the Tsar and his family were executed. Rasputin's legacy, however, lived on. Some saw him as a mystical healer, others as a con artist who manipulated his way into the royal court. Either way, his story has become one of the most infamous chapters in Russian history, a tale of power, intrigue, and one very difficult man to kill. Thanks for tuning into Talescape. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that prove sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction and way harder to poison.